series where we seek to infuse the movement with voices and resources and inspiration for today's challenges. We've got a funny transition. This is episode 1 of season number 2, Jerry, and we're going to flip-flop roles here. In the first 14 episodes, I've gotten to interview a lot of people from inside the movement and outside of the movement, including yourself. I believe that was episode 9. But now we're going to reverse the roles. You're going to take the host baton from me in just a moment and interview me. So we're setting the stage as we walk through a few new things in this upcoming season. So thanks, Jerry, for being here. I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for having me. And thanks for handing that baton. I don't know which way we're handing, but one of the way.
Yeah.
So, Michael, I'm really excited today to have a conversation with you about the some new name, a new name change for the Oregon and Southwest Washington Association, Church of God of Oregon and Southwest Washington. It's a mouthful, right?
It's a mouthful.
So, when I brought you on as our media and resource pastor, one of the things that I tasked you with was, kind of giving our website a fresh updated facelift, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I thought, well, we'll just tweak a few things, color schemes, pictures, these kinds of things that someone who's not versed in really website design would think about. And you came to me and said, hey, are we really tied into the name? Are we tied into our mission? These kinds of things, and really start a conversation about what would a new doing business as name look like for the association. So we're going to talk today about kind of the process that you walked us through, and it was eye-opening to me, and a wonderful process to get to the name change that we're going to roll out here today. So thanks, Michael, for being here. So
glad to do so.
Yeah.
When I even put that update the website under a category of rebranding. And so because of some of my background, not just in ministry settings where I did do some of those similar things at Church God Exeter or for the region in Central Cal, I've had some experience in marketing as well outside in the secular world. And so it's like a convergence of those things. And so trying to use those lenses to be able to help the association and move forward in it. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm grateful. I would have definitely just taken our website and just moderned it up and freshened it up. But I'm grateful that we've had the chance to be able to do all of this dialogue, because there's been a lot of other people involved that wouldn't have been involved if it would have just been me back behind the keys, kind of doing some work to be able to get this new thing up and coming. So I think it's actually been really helpful for really what I think is a new chapter for our association. So
yeah, it's definitely been a collaborative effort, right? We've heard a lot of voices, included a lot of voices, and I think it's going to be exciting as we begin to gravitate to some common language that will help us really do our work together better. So
absolutely. Yeah, as I've been in your seat interviewing folks, a lot of times if I do a pre-conversation with people, they'll ask, am I presenting something or is it conversational? And so I think we're still going to do the conversational thing. Jerry, you're going to interrupt me and kind of ask, on behalf of the listener, maybe things that are coming to your mind while I'm sharing. But I am going to, because I think since we're unveiling this thing, I think there's a presentation part of it. So I am going to use some slideshows in just a moment. So any other questions for me before we jump into the slideshow, or do you want me to
jump on in? Yeah. Excited.
Right,
all right.
So this is the presentation I put together for it, just couched under this idea of new name. I do have our abbreviation there to just get at what you already said, this mouthful, even when it's put into this abbreviation standpoint. I thought it was really interesting. Carl Vaders picked up on it. He came not too long ago for that small church, helping small churches thrive conference. And he was, what happened is he was getting ready to share resources with us, all of his slide deck and all kinds of other things. And he tended to use the abbreviation from the website or from the group that he was working with. And here we
Mhm.
are, and he's like Orwakog, and I think he had said something like, it sounds like
Yeah,
I'm kind
right.
of like choking this name out. And it has been a common conversation that people have had, either the mouthful trying to remember the order or something like that. So you mentioned that I came on as the media and resource pastor, and there's been a few objectives that I've been working out, one of which is this rebranding. I've launched encounter groups. So we had the first iteration of it. I'm actually in a second iteration right now. So it's been pretty cool to be able to see that. And then that's grown and developed, and some new things that we're working on and are yet to have launched. And then this channel of communication, the Awakening series that we're currently in, was another thing that we've launched. And so here we are in season 2 now. I've been building relationships, as the new guy on the block, and knowing, a few faces, but it's been really great. I do feel like I'm a part of the team now, not just our district team, but, as we met with the district council not too long ago, and we've
Yeah.
met with other leaders at other conferences. It's been really cool to do that. And then begin the rebranding process. So again, you can kind of see as I picked that apart, there were or three main things that I wanted to do in that rebranding. Whoa, I thought I had one more slide in there, but well, maybe I've got it up here. That's right. So I wanted to like
It,
look at what is. This led me to like, Jerry, can we change anything, or are these things in cement? And so like our name, because you've got to think about that when it comes to, will we use the same URL? Right now it's orwacog.org. And that's hard because like a marketing perspective is you want your name to be tip of the tongue, easy to remember, so that when people are typing it in, they don't have to go to any other support system to remember it. And so that was even where some of it came into play. I've asked about the mission, purpose, and all that kind of stuff that's there. And then, discover what could be. I remember talking with Steve Robertson, and he was like, hey, can we, upgrade what we're currently doing with giving possibilities, because we're
right.
limited. We have a channel for it, but it's only via PayPal. So it's got some initial caps where everything is efficient, and in the world largely around us, for the exchange of goods or donations in our case. um, we've got some areas to improve. And so, or what are some other websites that we like that we could incorporate, components of what they're doing. So what is to what could be. And then what I've done is I've established a list of digital assets for us. So here's what we've already got: channels like our Facebook channel. I've created a YouTube channel for us. That's where this is broadcast from. And so we want to maintain that and then use all those channels well. And then in these three categories, the website, like you talked about, the
Hmm.
social media, eventually, like those things will all get branded the same because you want the same brand recognition. We just had the Super Bowl yesterday. I know you were busy watching golf instead of
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
game. You only
It was
caught the
way more
last couple of
exciting.
minutes. But I mean, we always talk about, the commercials that are in there, and people are spending a
Mm,
lot of money. And
right.
like Timu, for example, is a new company that was advertised yesterday on the Super Bowl. I think they had something like 6 Timu ads. They used the same commercial again and again, but they're trying to just get name recognition out there for those that don't currently know what they are. They wanted questions to arise. They wanted them to go look it up. And then there were simple ways for people to research all of that. So it's kind of funny. The group I was watching the Super Bowl with, those that were familiar with Timu were talking about it. Those that weren't were asking questions. In that sense, that, let's say that they spent $1 million per ad. That's ridiculous. I know we wouldn't
Yeah,
do that
that's amazing. Nope.
in the ministry, but let's say that they spent $5 million to get out there. They're looking for name recognition, and they're looking for people to potentially turn to them or start anew that way. So there's this
Yeah.
alignment in branding that way. And then we've got broadcast channels for all of those things to go out. So I'm trying to build a fleet of, you know digital assets that will tell our story, that will communicate what we're doing, and invite people into the journey with us. So that's kind of the big picture that I'm trying to build out there.
Yeah, that's great. So many ways in which we could get the message out, right?
Yeah.
We're currently on Facebook, but I know that's for an older population, so possibly Instagram or X or other
Yep.
ways of communicating. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this large social media world that we live in, you can like it or love it. And I find that myself in a really funny spot. I really don't like social media much. I work in the social media realm for marketing purposes, like for our business. I run that for our dog and cat daycare and boarding facility. And so I know it's a really important economic driver for
Right,
us. Um, but yeah, at a personal level, like I'm kind of tired of social media. So it's a funny spot.
right.
We're in
It
that
is.
world right now. And like you had said, X and all of the hubbub around X versus Twitter, the name change that's there.
Right,
And yeah, we're living in this highly connected world, and it's easy to feel like I don't care about any of that. But as kingdom people, I think it is important for us to understand how people are experiencing the world around them, potentially how to meet them in that spot,
right, right.
and move forward with it. So I think from a missional standpoint, it is important, even if we don't personally want to stay engaged with it. So,
Yeah, especially a
all
younger
right,
crowd, right?
yeah, I agree. Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah, feel like I'm part of Generation X. Are you Gen X or are you
I'm boomer.
you're a boomer, Jerry?
I'm
That's
a boomer.
crazy.
I
Yeah,
know.
you're
Yeah,
like at the
yeah.
very tail end of the
I am
boomers.
tail end. Yep, yep.
Yeah. And so I'm
Um,
kind of funny because I'm Gen X, but I am relatively close to the millennials. And so I get some of the thinking they have, but I'm totally, Gen X and some of those character traits that are known there. And it is interesting. I feel like I've reached a point now where I'm like, all right, technology has changed enough. I don't want it to change anymore. I'd like it
yeah,
just to stay where it is. But again, like we're saying, there's younger and younger, newer and newer
yeah.
generations that are doing new things. And again, kingdom missional minded people. I think we've got to figure out how to go to that territory where they are. So all right. So I mentioned already that this is kind of the framing what is and what could be. So from our name standpoint, as I went back and just looked at like even our legal documents, Association of the Churches of God of Oregon and Southwest Washington, it does get abbreviated a little bit differently, which is interesting. You go to our website and you flip that. Oregon Washington Church of God is technically what that is abbreviating there. So you can kind of see that we don't have consistency even in our legal name versus our URL name. And a lot of times for
Right.
branding, you want those to be unified so that it's one name. People don't have to remember, is it association of, or is it, do we start with the state name first? So that's what is. And then what could be, you use this lead and you use that language of DBA. I had thrown out there, because we are a legal organization, 501c3, we have legal approved naming that's in there that's important for us to maintain. And so what I had posed is let's use a DBA, a doing business as, while we maintain that legal name. So now we're not looking to make radical sweeping bylaw changes, which is usually heavier lifting. We're looking to keep that legal name, but go for this DBA. A lot of churches and organizations do that. Or even, I might reference our business from time to time. Our business is doing that same type of thing. We have a DBA for what we're running and operating there. And that was because when we bought the business, it already had a name and we wanted to maintain brand recognition, but we had to create a new legal entity that owned it. And so there's a slight discrepancy. So for branding continuity, we went with the original name. So that's the concept. I know Pastor Glenn, the chair, had kind of approved in general that idea. And then we've since had conversations with the whole district council on it. And then when it comes to the web address, you do want it to ring true in the same exact way, but you want it to be memorable and motivating. So it's sticky versus stuck
Right.
in your throat, cog
Exactly.
that way. So that's at
Right.
least some of the concepts that I've been posing back behind the what is and what could be there. So what's funny though, Jerry, is that as I started doing research, is that we are in an interesting spot because we are not defined by state boundaries.
Right.
We play across the Columbia River. And so we are, the reason why our name is what it is because it's naming truth, Oregon
Mhm.
and Southwest Washington. So whereas there are ministries that are clearly just defined by their states, I'll list at least one of those and talk about some of them in just a bit. Then you do have other areas that are regions. We're kind of like a region. But what's
Mhm.
interesting is that we include a whole state and more. So that's technically the definitions of our region. I'll talk about some others that are in a similar category that are like regionally based. And then you've got associations. Again, we're like an association because we cross state lines, and so our common word is different than just defined by a state level. So the
Yep.
big flagship of state ministries is Indiana Ministries. They're the largest um, of our types.
Mhm. Right.
And so you can kind of see their naming conventions there. Their official name is Indiana Ministries, and then their web address is indianaministries.org. So, from a branding standpoint, they're nailing it. They've got commonality that's in there. But that is kind of a dated
Mhm.
naming technology. It would be nice if we were only Oregon, then we would probably have just simply done like an Oregon Church of God Ministries or an Oregon Ministries. So we would have been faced with how do we navigate that? But that wasn't available. And you don't want to put the whole mouth load Oregon and Southwest Washington Ministries,
Right.
even though that's true and accurate, it's still getting into that very verbose standpoint. And so you've got quite a few Illinois ministries,
Mhm.
Florida ministries, but they also use Church of God. So they're an
Mhm.
interesting one. You've got quite a few that use that naming convention, but it isn't available to us because of our
Mhm.
cross state stuff. Regions, you've got like California's divided into three regions: Northern, Central, and Southern California. I can talk about this one because I had to make some of these decisions when we got to this point. And so technically, I called us Churches of God of Central California. I left it shorter there, I guess unintentionally, just because I was naming the region itself. And then we
Mhm.
used CHOG, centralcal.org. But you notice, like I'm trying to make it shorter. We couldn't just do CHOG Cal. We considered Chog Sin Cal because some people use that common verbiage in Central
Mhm.
California area, but we didn't want sin, even though it wasn't the right spelling to be associated with our association.
Right.
So we had to
Right.
think through all of these things, and we landed at Churches of God of Central California. That was our DBA, and chogcentralcal.org as our URL there. And so we didn't have that because of our multi-state language. We couldn't use something similar. And then you've got
Mhm.
associations like our friends up north, the PNA. They're technically the Pacific Northwest Association, but their abbreviation is a lot of what just people say. So they've hit it really well from a branding standpoint. People have grabbed hold of their shortened language. It rolls off the tongue relatively
Mhm.
well. And then they used this PNAcog org for their URL.
Mhm.
So again, you can see
Yeah.
just with the few examples that are there, there's a variety of them. I think there's something like 48 different organizations that would kind of be cousins to us in that way. And everybody does it differently. I think that's just the nature of our autonomy and the time that they come out and social trends that are there.
Yeah, interesting research. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, all different types and kinds, and helpful to look at what others are doing,
Yeah.
but then frame it in, what do we wanna look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the interesting thing. Going back to our autonomy, we've got the freedom to choose to do it
Mhm.
however we want. But there are advantages to being aligned with and patterning ourselves after other brothers and sisters, or just the other relationships we've got to the wider movement. So
Right.
this brings in this question about abbreviation. So this is another hurdle. And so this is my understanding of it. Anybody can jump in and correct this if they would like. But what I notice is that, like, how do you abbreviate Church of God? So when I first came
Mhm.
to Church of God at Exeter, my natural inclination was COG. So I immediately started abbreviating that way. What I came to discover later on, especially as I like went to national office's website, I found that they used CHOG, and I'm like, why would you put the H in there? And I still honestly don't know the
Mhm.
clear reason why it's one or the other. But what I came to discover is that before 1997, more people tended to use COG, I think the P&A is a little bit of an outlier because they made that change more recent than 97 from what I understand, but
Mhm,
they
mhm.
kept that. So it's almost like a dated naming convention now. And then after 1997, because you've got the reorganization of Church of God Ministries Inc., what happened is CHOG Ministries started to be the official branding for Church of God Ministries. And so, I again, walking in alignment and unity, even at a branding state, I kind of lean in
Right.
that direction. We are associated with
Yep.
Church of God Ministries. And so I like using that language. I've used that on the different places. We were CHOG Exeter, CHOG
Mhm.
Central Cal. We continue to use the CHOG that way. And then I kind of forgot this slide, but just it was 1997 when that Church of God Ministries was
Mhm.
established. So, you've been around for a while, Mr. Boomer? Have you
Mm,
noticed other
right.
ways that people have named? Does this spur anything else on as you think about churches and associations and how they've named themselves?
Not necessarily, no. I mean,
Yeah,
CHOG is the one that, COG is the one that kinda I'm most familiar with, and yeah, I
yeah,
did notice the kind of morphing of that
yep,
to or COG, I should say, and the
yeah,
morphing of that to CHOG, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah.
you can see it if you put it on parallel to the way churches are named. In our earliest iterations, most of our cities have First Church of God,
Mhm,
whatever it happens to be. That was a naming convention. And now you see in the 80s that began to change. People started to use community church in their
mhm,
language, maybe scrubbing Church of God altogether. And then you get kind of like in the 90s and early 2000s, people started using that single word, cool, hip language,
right,
and again, maybe community church wasn't there any longer, or Church of God was no longer there. We're just like hip church, or something like that. So
right,
you kind of see again the way people are trying to utilize important things like the name as a way to be able to reach people and connect with
yep,
people where they're at. So
yep.
all right, Jerry, without any further ado, this is the big unveil. Are you ready?
Ready.
So here we go. Common imagery here in our region, Oregon and Southwest Washington, right there. But where we landed, and this came not just me sitting down and thinking through this research and then sharing it with you and Fred and Paula, but we did that. But we
Mhm,
also took this
yep,
to other groups. With those encounter groups, I was talking this stuff through with them. I wrote a connections article that talked about this and invited people to provide feedback. And then there was even a pastors gathering that I hosted
mhm,
where I threw this out there and invited people to provide feedback. And then, kind of as we landed the plane for making this decision, what happened is we pulled quite a few voices. We tried to make sure that it was representative of the association. So we had voices from larger cities and smaller cities. We had voices from um, some more African American churches. We had female voices, male
mhm,
voices. So we pulled all those together in an email thread, and then it just rolled in a couple of reply alls as people were giving all kinds of feedback, and we wrestled things to the ground. But this is the one that we settled on, and it wasn't my first choice, not because I didn't like it, but because I just felt like, oh, I don't know, like maybe we need something different and new. But here it is, Church of God Northwest. And a lot of the idea behind that was truly Northwest is the way that you could go from, you know, Pendleton, let's say, or into LeGrand, and people
mhm,
still saw themselves associated with and a part of the Northwest. Go over to the coast, Astoria or Seaside or North Bend or Bandon, and people saw themselves as the Northwest. Go down south, along the I-5 corridor, and people still associated that Northwest as an identifying term. It felt like home. And then you could cross the Columbia River. It didn't alienate either one of the states. You could go across and you could, Vancouver considers themselves a part of the Northwest. And
mhm,
there's a
yep,
lot of, if you look at the wider culture, the Northwest carries with it some imagery, um, some even values you could say that people in this area resonate with and connect with. And so we used that Church of God first, and then Northwest as the identifying name there. And then what we would abbreviate because of that COG versus CHOG and that specific decision in 1997 for CHOG Ministries. Our abbreviation would be CHOG Northwest, and then the URL that we would roll out would be www.chognorthwest.org. Using org, people use org because that's a organization versus .com, which is about commerce,
Hmm.
and so we're clearly in that organizational 501c3 sector, so that we align in that way, in that sense. So I'm really curious to see how people respond to this. I have a feeling that there's going to be, for some people, like this sigh of relief, like, oh, that totally
Yeah.
fits. I'm sure there's going to be some pushback, like, well, wait, aren't we going to be confused with the P&A? They're Pacific
Right.
Northwest Association. But we just felt like Pacific Northwest Association and Church of God Northwest, though they use that same term in their verbiage, there was enough distinction left in there. So there it is, Jerry. What do you think, man?
Yeah, it's beautiful, especially especially speaking of the PNA, the way they branded themselves. I mean, I don't ever say Pacific Northwest Association. It's always
Yeah,
just the PNA. So, I
yeah,
think I think as we wrestle it to the ground, there's definitely enough of a difference that there should be no confusion. I too was it was an interesting process because there were several names that
hmm,
we laid out it was just interesting how things kind of moved and began to resonate
yeah.
with
I
this
agree.
yeah, I'm excited to not have to um you know I've already kind of started talking about Church
Yeah,
of God Northwest and not having to say yes, I'm employed with the Association of Church of God Oregon and Southwest Washington. While
yeah,
that is true in a legal sense,
yep,
yes,
yep, yeah,
EBA.
yeah,
It's a beautiful thing. So
yeah. Yeah, and then
really
we
cool.
had let me pull this back real quick. Where did my screen go? We had that meeting with the district council not too long ago.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
we have officially now
Yep.
presented to that governing body, that governance body. They've provided feedback, helped shape it, and so now we're in the channels of rolling out, which is why we're here publicly announcing it this way. I just wrote an article also for Connection that announces this in the same way. So I think both of these will go out, so we can start getting it there.
Yeah.
I've already bought the that URL, so we have that domain name, and I've been actively working. Now I can move forward. Now that that name
Yep.
question is out of the way, I can move forward with a lot of the bigger building blocks of the website rebrand. So
Yeah, that's really cool because language really does matter, right?
it really does.
The way we brand ourselves really matters. Well, I want to thank you, Michael, for walking us through this journey of kind of the rebranding and renaming of things. Excited to see the launch
Yeah.
happen, and yeah, really looking forward to that. Love to have some additional conversation because with
Yeah.
the launch of the new names, we've also been walking through a process of rethinking our vision and values. And so
Yep.
maybe we can get together
Let's do it.
um, some other time talk about that. It'd be great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm
thanks everybody
excited.
for tuning in. Great to have you with us. Uh, look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day.
Yeah. Bless you guys.